Okay, just as we have this color of this text here. So in the same way, we can also use CSS to color our elements. The same way we can also use CSS to color our elements. Now, the concept of color in CSS is thus. Each time you want to define the color of a text, each time you want to define the color of a text in CSS, what we use is color. But when we want to define the background color of a text, we use background color. So those are the two most important things I want us to bear in mind today. If we need to define the color of a text, we use color. If we want to define the background color, we use background color for that. So I will just come up with, I think so for that, I'm coming to try and open the this is it. Okay, so if you want to define the color of a text in CSS, you use background color. If you want to use the color of, if you want to define the color of a text, you use color. Meanwhile, if you want to define the background color, how do you want the background of the text to look, you use background color. That's the property you use to define the color of the differentiate between those two colors. As you can see here, this is a typical HTML document. Now, I have styled it this way. I will just erase some things and go all over it again. This is okay. Let me remove this. Remember, we did inline styling, and I said it is recommended to use external styling for your stylings in CSS. You remember we talked of something like that last week. So that's why I'm reverting to external styling here. So in this scenario now, we have our P elements. We have our P elements. Yes. Okay. So we have these heading elements. We have tables. I use them as images here. Let me just remove this. We have these tables. We have different sections. Okay. So this is a table. This is a heading. This is a P element. This is another P element. Now this P element, I want to change the background color of this P element to a different color. I want to change it to a different color. Now, what I need to do is to go to my CSS and call the color, and I want to change it to. And call the color I want to change it to. Like here. You remember we talked of the syntax of CSS. What you want to style, you call here. Then enclosed in this curly brace. Then this curly brace has property and value. Now, we are calling the property color. So color defines how you want the text, what you want the text to look like. While background color defines what you want the background to look like. As you can see, I've already styled this here. Now, this P element this is a P element. Both of them are P elements. Both of them are P elements. Because I define background color to be red, they change to red. And the color white, it remains white. I can change this color to black, it will change to black. So it's pretty straightforward. If you want to define the color, you use color. If you want to change the background, it's called background color. This one is called background color, while the other one is called foreground color, but popularly known as color. Don't need to put in the foreground. Calling as color, used to color the text, while the other one is used to color the background, where the text sits. So that is the main thing about color. Now, is another thing I want us to take notice. In CSS, we define color in 3 different ways. In CSS, color is defined in 3 different ways. We have, well, like what I did here. I called the word, I called the color name itself. Specifying the color name itself is another way of defining in CSS. Let's say I don't want to specify the color name. There is a method called the RGB method. RGB method. R stands for red, G stands for green, blue, B stands for blue, which we know are the 3 primary colors. So how these colors are being mixed together with numbers determine whether you have a red or a yellow or a blue. Let me explain. There are three ways to select colors in CSS. Number one way is by calling the name of the color itself, like I called here black. The second way is to use the RGB method. It is called the RGB method. RGB. R stands for red, B stands for green, and blue, B stands for blue. The RGB method to define color in CSS. Now, this RGB method, how has it been implemented? Let's say I want to call the color black, but instead of writing the word black, I come here, I say RGB. Now, sorry.
Sir, can you please zoom your screen a little bit?
Okay. Is it better now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. So the RGB method is used to define colors. Now, this RGB stands for red, blue, and red, green, and blue. Now, in the RGB method, they are represented with numerals ranging from 0 to 225. Now, the first of the numerals, this first 0 stands for red, this second 0 stands for green, the third number stands for blue. They are defined in such a way that depending on how you mix color red, green, and blue, you get a corresponding color. Like if you put color red 0, put color blue 0, put color green 0, color blue 0, you get the black color, which is what I did there. Now, if you put the other color F, I know for those of us who did the binary numbers in school and stuff, F is a number in binary. But it's for now, it might not break your head and bother yourself with all these numberings. All you just need to know is that colors can be represented as their name using the RGB, and the third one is using the hexadecimal code. Using the hexadecimal code for color. How you present your color doesn't really matter. How you write it, whether you write it in Word or you write it using this pattern, doesn't really matter. It depends on your preference. But it's important you know so that when you go and you see color written like this, you shouldn't say, why is it written like, what does this FFF mean? FFF simply means white, the color white. Why 000 means color black. It ranges from white to black. So 0 is mixing 000 gives you white. Mixing FFF gives you mixing 000 gives you black. FFF gives you white. And FFF is the last digit. The 255 is represented as F. As I said before, don't break your head about how they represent each of them. What you need to do is, if you're using VS Code, for example, like what I did here, this is my color red. You want to know the equivalents in RGB, just click on it. VS Code does that job for you. You can see the equivalent of red in RGB is equivalent of red in RGB is 225, red is 255, and this is 0. Why this one is 0? Why blue is 0? So this method and this method are the same thing, but this one is written with numbers, this one is written with alphabets. You understand? So basically, this is how you represent colors. Another way of represent color is using the hexadecimal code I talked about. Using VS Code, using hexadecimal code. Those ones, the numbers are written in code like, this is a hexadecimal code where you combine numerals and numbers. Hexadecimal code, you combine numerals, and as you can see, FF0000 stands for red. But all you need to know for now is you can represent number using three methods, using color using three methods: the name of the color, hexadecimal code, and RGB, which stands for red, blue, green, and blue. And another way you could get the equivalent of a color, let's say you write the color, let's say I write color purple here, purple. and I want to check what's in RGB, how it's represented. You can just come here with your VS Code. If you click it, it gives you the equivalent in other patterns using writing colors. There's the RGB pattern and the likes. So that is what you need to know about color for now. Just straightforward. When you're representing the color of a text, you use color, the background color of any object, not just a text. You use background color. Like here, you see H1. I use green here for color. That's why you see this is green. If I change it to red, it changes to red. If I change it to red, it becomes red. So that's all you need to know about the color. Now moving to the next thing. In every element you see displayed has something called a contrast level. Now, after specifying the elements, another thing I can do is I want this. There are some elements you see, they become very blurred. They don't show up very well. It's called opacity. Opacity tells us the level of shows the level of visibility or of an object. Let me rephrase again. It tells us how, whether bold or dim or faint an object should be. The word is called opacity, opaque, from the word opaque. So, and it's defined between the value of it is between 0 and 1. If your opacity is 0, it means that you're saying that the element should be very visible. If your opacity is 1, you're saying that the element should be almost not visible. If your opacity is 0.5, you're saying that the element should be visible. Let me practicalize it. If I add opacity to this object now, I say opacity, and I put, say, 0.5. You see, the element is becoming a little bit fainter than it was. If I change it to 1, it's very bold. If I make it 0, the element has disappeared. The element is still there because you can still see the space it's occupying, but it's almost not visible. So if I keep increasing it, it will be coming up like that. See, that's changed. If I keep increasing it, to be coming up like that. Change it again to 2, 3, it comes up like that. So the default opacity for all elements is, as we notice, is 1. But if you don't want your element to be very bright as this, you can now play with the opacity. Now, I said this to say that another way that another element that is being added to the color property, opacity can be included in the color property. Let's say you don't want to define opacity like this, you can include it in the color property by adding the alpha symbol. After writing your RGB, you add the alpha symbol. This alpha symbol stands for opacity. It means that how opaque should this object be? So I can come here and add it as the last element and add 0.5. The same effect. So that's why if you see some color, they just put RGBA. This A stands for opacity. It stands for alpha, and it represents opacity. So if I put my A, if I come here, I put 1, it goes back to 1. But if I don't need my object to be opaque or anything, I can just move the A and just allow my RGB. So you see some elements, it's included, and then now play with it around. It helps to make whether your object to be faint or very bright. So, and it's sort of adding it on its own as opacity separately. It can be included in the color, in the value of either the background color or the color property. So if you don't want to include it on its own as opacity, you can include it while including your color, especially when using the RGB method to represent your color. But if I'm not using this RGB method, and maybe I wrote the color name as I did before, then I can define my opacity by just writing opacity equal to this, as we did before. So having said that about color and opacity, I just wanted to bring that opacity into place because sometimes you see RGBA. The A stands for alpha, and it's used to define the opacity of the elements that you're trying to style. So that's it for color for now. So I don't know if you have any questions on color before we move to the next object, the next property. Any question on color? All right. So having said that, any questions? I want to get a response, please.
I don't have any questions so far.
Okay. All right. So we'll move to another important part of CSS, which is the text. How do you style text? Because as you have all known, in this field, we deal with a lot of text. How do you style them? HTML comes with its own default setting for our text. So even without styling, once you type, you see that the color is white, everything is just the way it is. Without styling, this is how our elements look. Without styling, this is how it looks. So now introducing styling now, we now have different things to play with. We now have different things to play with. Now, sorry, let me, okay. Okay, now, CSS, as we know, gives us the ability to manipulate our work and force it to take certain styles that we want. The default HTML doesn't give us much of that ability. So that is why where CSS comes in. How we define how our text should look, maybe how you should probably want your text to be underlined, you want it to be bold, and all those things can be handled by CSS. So just straight to the point, font type is font family in CSS. As you type, your HTML comes with a default font family. But let's say you're typing, I don't like this font family, I want it to change. That is where CSS comes in. As usual, you call the elements you want to work on. When you call the element, you come here and define the font family of that element. And there are different types of font families. As I said before, you don't need to cram them. But while working, as you work, you master most of them. Some of them, you actually have to download them and probably their plugins and their setting and use. And some just comes by default. Like you just type and use them. I think sans serif is by you can see it has changed the way it's looking. This is not how it looked before, because I defined a particular type of font family. Let's say I come here and I say I want my P to be the font family I want to choose to be so it has taken one of these. Let me see the one it took. Yes, it has taken the first one, Korea new. You can see how the font looks. So it can manipulate your fonts and make it look the way you want. But while writing font, the general rule is this. If you remember when I typed it, three of them came out. Why we do this in CSS is there are some browsers you finish building, and there are some browsers that want to access your app or your application, your web page, and they don't have access to the first font family. They don't have access to the second one. So why we define three? We define three and we include a default font family. A default font family. We do this so that our browsers can now, if peradventure, either because of internet network or something, I'm not connected to the font family that is being specified, my browser can use the default font family that HTML renders. So that's why you see most times, in most cases, use sans serif. So that, let's say for some reason, your browser can't communicate with this one, it will just fall to this one. So it's always defined, you always define at least two types of font families in every of your design. That is a general rule. So the font family is used to change the fonts. So you can see the H looks different, this looks different, and the others look different. Another important property I would like us to look when dealing with text is called the font size. By default, your document comes with a default font size known as 16 pixel. 16 pixel. A default font size known as the font size 16 pixel. This is the font size. Font size. The font size in CSS or sizes in CSS generally, when you have to do with measurement or sizes, they are measured using either pixel or we measure either using, let me just write it somewhere here. We measure using pixel, abbreviated, the unit is px, or rem, or m, or percentage. These are the 5 percentage like that. So each time when you write the what you want to measure, maybe 5, you put the pixel, maybe 60, you put rem. After writing what you want to measure, you put the unit in front of it, just as we commonly do. So these are the way we measure in generally in web design in CSS. These are the units of measurement: pixel, rem, m, or percentage. But your normal HTML comes with its own default font size, which in most cases has to do with the setting of your system, which in most cases has to do with your system view. It mostly comes in either 12 pixel, 14 pixel, or 16 pixel, but the common one is 16 pixel. So once you type anything like this, by default, it comes in 16 pixel, except for H1 elements that comes in different pixel. Now, having said that, after writing your properties like this, you can now force it to change the size by using your font size, which CSS does for us, gives us the ability to change our size. Like I wrote here 14 pixel. If I change this header, you can see the header looks small because I wrote 14 pixel. Let me see. The default H1 element is bigger than 14 pixel. But let's say after writing it, I still want to reduce it. I don't want it to be 14 pixel. I can change it to 14 to this size. Or after writing it, I want it bigger. I can go back and make it 84 pixel. As you can see, it's very large. So pixel, rem, m, and percentages are used for measurement. If I change this to rem, it changes. It's too big. 84 rem is very big. So that's why it's occupied everywhere. So rem is actually a very big unit of measurement. But rem is like a relative unit of measurement. We'll discuss it as we proceed. Rem is used written for now. We'll just stick with pixel for now. We'll discuss rem, especially when we start dealing with responsive design. We discuss rem, m, and percentage and how to use them to make your work more responsive. So for now, we'll just know that they are also units of measurement in web development. So having said that, another property I want us to consider when dealing with text is called the text transform. What does text transform do? I have written my text in HTML. This is my heading. I wrote this heading in HTML. Let me wrap this in BP elements. Let me wrap this in P elements. Now I've written my text. I've written my text. Now, when writing this text, I wasn't careful enough to start to look at, okay, instead of I need to use capital letter here, I need to use small letter here, I was just writing my text. After writing that, I can still use my CSS to now tell my text how I want the text to look. Because let's say I have a full page. I have a full page. This is a table, so I would love to use something else that's not a table. Let me copy something. Now let me copy something that is a full text. Okay, so let me copy this. Okay, and insert here. Okay, this is a full text. This is my P1, my P element. Now I've written this thing. While writing it, I wasn't careful enough. I wasn't careful enough to start to say, okay, let me style like this. Let me remove this style. Let me make sure I write everything in capital letter. But after writing, I want to now change it. I want to now change it. That is where text transform comes in. And let's say my heading, I want to make my heading all capital letter. Text transform comes in. So if you go to text transform, it gives you the ability. It has different values. It has capitalized, it has lowercase, it has uppercase, and the rest of it. But these are the three main ones we use. Capitalized means every first letter, the first letter of every word in that element should be in capital letter. Let's look at it. As you can see, heading elements. The heading element I wrote here, which is this word here. When I wrote it here, E is in small letter. Okay, let me even change this one to small letter from here. This is how it looks like in my HTML. So before I did capitalize, this is what it looks like. After capitalize, I'm saying make all the first word in this element, all the first word capital letters. That is what that property does. So it still has uppercase. Uppercase means make all of it uppercase. The whole of it becomes uppercase. Then we still have lowercase, which is what it was now. So even if I wrote it in my HTML as uppercase, CSS will force it here in this using this property. So that is what text transform does for us. Now we'll move to the next one. We're just going through text manipulation. There are so many of them. I just want to pick a few. There's another one called text decoration. I finished writing my header, and the same thing. This text transform I did here, I can also apply it to my P elements. Let's say I want all my P elements to be capital letter. The same thing, text transform. I make all of them. Okay, I want to capitalize them. All the first words to be in caps. You can see every first word in this whole paragraph. You can see all of them will be in capital letter. That is what that does for us. You change it to uppercase, the same thing happens here. No matter, so you change it to uppercase, the same thing happens here. So that is it for that. Now, another thing is, I want to underline this my text. I've written it. I want to underline this real line across it. I can use text decoration. Text decoration. It has different properties. It has dash. If I put dash, let's put dash. Text decoration. Sorry. Okay, text decoration underline. Dotted. Okay, for some reason these values are not coming up. My keyboard. Yeah. We have underline. My keyboard is okay. So we have mostly have underline, we have line through, we have double, we have stroke, and you can play with these things. There are so many of them. Line through, to just draw a line across. So you play with it. But basically, one of the things we use it for text decoration is when we want to make a word underlined, we use this and change it to underline. And if for some reason there is an underlined word by default, which we'll see. Remember, let me see if we remember. There's an HTML element that comes by default underlined. I need somebody to remind me of that element. Before we have less than 1 minute. What?
I think it's the link.
The anchor elements.
Anchor.
All right, let's continue. Yes, the anchor elements. By default, it comes. Underlined. So one of the basic application of this thing is, as we do it, we'll be stating the application so that we know where to use them most likely. One where we use this text decoration is when dealing with the anchor elements. since it comes naturally underlined, we want to remove the underlined. So what you do, you come to the anchor element, you say your text decoration, you declare it to be none. And automatically that will not be underlined. Let's see an example here. Let's say after our header, I want to add, after our header, let's add the navigation. Okay, let's add the navigation. Sorry, I'm having my keyboard. Then so let me just randomly define this tray. Okay, this is home. So as you can see, it came underlined. Home, about, contact. So let's assume that this was our navigation. So it came underlined. We want to remove this underline. That is where we apply this text transform plays a major role for us. So all it does is we just come here, we select that element because it's in the A elements. Select it. And we apply our text decoration. Our text decoration, I will give it a value, say none. So the underline is off. So this is one of the major places we apply that CSS property. And okay, I think that is all for text. Any question on text? How to manipulate text? Okay, another one we could try is how text are being italicized. Maybe you wrote a text and you want it italicized, and that could be handled with it's also in the font style. Let me see. Font style. Font style. Say you want it italicized for some reason. Forgot to mention that one. So these are where you handle these things. There are so many of them. All you need to do is to play around with them so that you understand what they do. So let me add this font style here. Rather, maybe I want this all to be italicized. So see, they are all italicized. So that's basically it. So having said that, that is all for text. How we play with text and make them look the way we force them to look the way we want them to look. So any questions on text before we go to the next subject? Any question? All right. Having said that, I want us to look at boxes. Boxes. And I want you to please try. I need your full attention on this because let me try and make my screen larger. Okay. Hope you can see this diagram on the left. Is it visible enough? Hello?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Now, every HTML element you see, the A element, the P element, every element you see, CSS treats each of the elements as a box. Each of the elements as a box. The P elements, the H elements. Now, in this, what I wrote here, I've written, maybe let me say this one is, okay, let me say I wrote 4 P elements. Hello, hello, this one is another P element there. This one is another P element, hi, another one mates. When I mean 4 P elements means I wrote them like this. So I wrote them like this. I defined 4 different P's for them. I think I need to clear that out so it doesn't look confusing. You have to bear with me today. I think I have to restart my system. I'm having my mouse isn't responding at the moment. Okay. This is hello. Hello. And the next one is there. The next one is this is hi. The next one is mates. So these are the 4 elements I'm trying to describe on my screen on the left, the 4 of them. Now, CSS treats each of these P elements as an entity. What it does is it puts an invisible box around each of these elements. An invisible box around each of these elements. So this hello has its own box. There has its own box. Remember, that's why I said elements, not words. Like CSS is not putting box between, like this one you're seeing now. This, what I wrote here now, you're sitting in the cubicle, digitally working away. So between this, okay, then if you were to go to the vending machine, between vending and machine, there are no boxes. They're all in one box. Hope you understand it. So it is between elements that you have a box. P element and another element, there's a box. P element and H1 element, there's a box. Okay, let's say even this element was a H2 element, not even a P element, H2 element, not a P element. And this one was, let's say expand elements. Let me not even use PP elements. And I have H2, I have span, I have P elements, 2 P elements. So let's call them that. Now, what CSS does is it draws an invisible box around these elements. It draws an invisible box around them. Now, in this box that it draws, this screen, this looks very tiny. I'm so sorry. I wanted it to be clearer than this. Okay. Okay, is it better now? Hope you can see it better now. Right. So this, let's assume that this is our P element. Hello. This is our span element there. So CSS, the white space, in CSS, we have something called margin, we have border, and we have padding. These three concepts is what the CSS uses to manipulate, HTML elements. Now, what is padding? Padding is a space between the element that you've expressed and the border. See this whole white space, it's called padding. This whole white space is called padding. You're not seeing it, like, sorry, this box is not drawn on each element on the screen. It's an invisible box. So this whole white space is called padding. This white space is called padding. Now, between 2 elements, the space between 2 elements is called a margin. You have margin to your left. This is a margin. Now, this element P that is there. There's a margin to the left of it. There's a margin below it. Why this one has a margin up? So margin is the space between 2 elements. While padding is the white space between the value in that element and the invisible box that CSS creates. The value in that element and the invisible box that CSS creates. So now, if I want to calculate the total height of this element, it is not just measuring this height from here to here. I have to measure here, measure the padding, and measure the width, the thickness of this line, of this my border. It is called a border. So if you say, okay, what is the height of this element? The height of this height is the original height of this word I, the height, the original height of this I plus this height plus this one plus this my box. So the height of this height is just the height of the box. The width of the height, the same thing is the width of the box. Your margin is not included when you measure the height or the width of an element. Your margin is not included when you measure the height or the width of an element. What is included is the padding and the border thickness. The padding and the border thickness. Is it clear? So this, for instance, this is my H1 element. This is my H1 element. There's an invisible box around this H1 element. We can put the box, but by default, it comes invisible. The reason why you're seeing a space between this H1 element and this next element is because there is a padding between the both of them, and there is a margin between the both of them. So let's say the box was somewhere around here where my cursor is. So between here and here is the padding, and between here where my cursor is and the next element, the border of the next element is my margin. Is it making sense, please? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So let me put a border to these elements and call it I just want to put the border so that solid block. Just follow me. Don't worry about the border. So you see what happened. Let me include the same border here. Let me include the same border here. So you can see this is how by default CSS comes. If you remember, this my home were 3 different A elements. So that's why I see there is a border around the 3 of them. Now the margin is this space between where you have H, this space where my cursor is. This from here to where till it hits the box is the padding, sorry. Why the margin is the space between 2 boxes, 2 borders, sorry. Here and here is the margin. So this is how every element comes. But by default, the border is being removed so that it doesn't mess up the whole work. Then if you want to include it, if in some instances you need to show a border, you now include it. But this is how every CSS element comes. So if I want to measure the width of this element, the width of this element is the whole of this, my border. Because the margin is outside that border. So for this, my H1 element, I can now assign a width. It comes by its own, as you can, there is a default width already. But I now assign a width in it. I call the width maybe 12 pixel. 12 pixel. And let me move this font size. I call the width 12 pixel. See this 12 pixel you're seeing? The 12 pixel is the width of this box. The 12 pixel is the width of the box. Now we'll discuss why it came out of the box. But this 12 pixel is the width of this box. This from here to here is the 12 pixel. But the element is bigger than 12 pixel. That is why it's peeled out of the box. So you can actually define a given width for your elements. You can define a width. I've changed it to 200. So by default, it comes with its own width, but you can change the width. And now remember that if I change the width to 20, which means I have to go and change the font size of the element so that it will fit into the width that I've assigned, the new width I have assigned to it. So that it could fit into the new width that I've assigned to it. So if for any reason you need to change the width, you can see it has changed. So that it fits into that new width. So apart from the fact that it comes default, you can actually manipulate the width of your elements using CSS. That is what I want us to get in this topic, in this discussion. Apart from the fact that it comes default, you also have the ability to manipulate and change the width of your elements. The same thing applies to the height. You can also change the height of your elements. So having done this, we'll be dealing a lot with margin and padding. That's why I want us to understand it. We'll be doing a lot of manipulations with margin and padding, even with border. A lot of manipulation, because at times you need to reduce this size. Maybe you look at it, this thing is looking too big. Okay, you can see this space from up to this my heading is way too large. How do I reduce it? That is where the margin comes in. And remember, I told you that you can have margin to up to the top, you can have margin to the down, you can have margin by the side. So what I need to do is to come here and change the margin top and the padding top. So if I come to this my H1 element and I change it to define the margin, is margin. If you want it top, you add hyphen, you add dash top. It means you're trying to change the margin to the top. Let's say I want to make it 2 pixels. It has become very small, it has shrunk. The same thing applies. If I want it down, if I apply it down, it also reduces this space down. So margins and padding helps us to manipulate, helps us to style our elements so that it doesn't look too clustered and it doesn't look too spaced out. So that we'll give it this nice white spaces around. White spaces are also important. They make our work look very neat and presentable and make our web pages very attractive. So margin and padding are your go-tos for that effect. You add white spaces or remove extra white spaces from your HTML elements. And we can define margins by, as I said, margin top. Okay, I've done margin top here. Let me come to the next element then. I can do margin, okay, for this element. Okay, let me come and say margin bottom. I want the bottom, I want to shrink the margin. I want to shrink the margin. Let me say I make it 0.5. Oh, sorry. You know, this element, let me use this one to make it clearer. Let me use P elements. Margin bottom. Okay. Define the margin bottom. I remember that here down, where we define this H1 margin top, we also have somebody might ask, since the margin top, okay, let me even remove the margin top, make it 0. I don't have a margin top anymore for my H1 element. Margin top is 0. But if you notice that we still have white space here. Remember I said we have margin and we have padding. So the padding could also be reduced. Now if I change the padding to 0, padding top, shrinks further. It shrinks further. Padding top, margin top. It shrinks further. But as we proceed, there is a selector that we'll look into why this white space is still here. But we've removed every white space that this H1 element comes with up. We'll remove every other one that it comes with. This one here is the default one from the browser, which we can also manipulate. We'll deal with that shortly, which we can also manipulate. But everything that has to do with space up here, we've already removed it from this thing. And how can we check the margin and the margin of our element? We can use, remember our guy, this is our guy here. Right click, use your inspect, go to your inspect to inspect your page. Now, if you're inspecting this page, you come here. See the margin is 0. If I click on this arrow to inspect it, this yellow line, this yellow box you see down represents the margin down. We didn't change the margin down, but we changed margin top. So that's why you're not seeing anything up. But it still has margin down, margin bottom, and padding bottom. That's why you're seeing that box. So if I remove the margin bottom, that box disappears from there. So that's why you still have white space here between this A element and this H1 element. So this margin, as we go along, you see the importance of margin. But I want you to understand how it works. If you want to remove from the top, you use margin top. From the bottom, margin bottom. From the side, margin left. From the left side, from the right side, margin right. The same thing applies to padding. That is what it does for us. It is used to remove white spaces and make our web pages look very presentable. So that is it for white spaces and margin and how to style them. Any questions, please? If you're not clear on this margin, padding, border, please ask your questions now. Okay, I guess we understand this very understand the concept of margin and padding. So another thing I want us to also look at is something called the overflow property that I talked about. You remember when I changed this width to, I changed it to 20 pixel. Remember what we had then? When I changed the width to 20 pixel. Oh, sorry. Remove the box. Let me include the box again. So it's okay. When it was 20 pixel, remember we said some of our items we are still coming out of the box. Now we can actually, there is the CSS property controlling this. It's called the overflow property. What this overflow does is you're saying that if what you're typing, the content of your element content exceeds the provided width, what should happen? That is where overflow comes in. You have hidden, we have scroll. Those are the two basic ones. Hidden means that don't show it, hide that part. See, it has hidden the other parts. It has hidden the other parts. Why? Another option is scroll. Scroll introduces a scroll button immediately. It introduces a scroll button that can be used to check the other parts. As you can see, there's a scroll button here. Scroll introduces a scroll button. So the scroll button can be used to actually check the uh, 300. Okay, so this is the scroll button as introduced. So we're saying that if the content is more than the available box or the available size provided, what do I do? Introduce the scroll button. So each time if you want to see how it works, you can put the border first just to have an idea of how it works. Then, but most likely you're not going to be needing border. You're not going to be needing border except for cases where you need to put a border around an element. So this is a CSS property called the overflow. Overflow, it can be scroll, it can be hidden, as you saw what we used it to do. It is used when you define a given width. If you define a specific width for your CSS element, your HTML elements, but something needs to happen if it exceeds that width. It's okay. I don't want it to flow into another space. I want it to be contained in that space, and I want to either hide it or introduce a scroll button that can be used to see that part of the elements. So this one is mostly applied, in cases where you're showing something, I need to show maybe 1,000 items in a page, and what you have displayed on what you have displayed on your page is the height of your page has been exhausted. I still want users to see the items, even if the length of the item is more than the height of the page. You can use the overflow scroll to implement this. And it can still be broken down into overflow X, overflow Y. Overflow means apply overflow in the X direction. The other one means apply overflow in the Y direction. But if you don't want to put whether X or Y, just apply overflow scroll. And it applies overflow in both directions. But if I put X, the overflow is applied only in the X axis. It's not applied in the Y axis, as you can see here. So that is it for defining that. Then another important, any questions, please? Please, I need the response from you before I move on. Any questions? Hello?
I don't have any.
All right. Okay, so that is it for that. The next thing I want us to look into is border. Border. I know I've done something on it before. Border. We can write an element and we say, okay, we want to define, give the element a nice border. That is the border that HTML, that CSS somehow places on the element. We want to see it, want it to be visible. That is where our border style comes in. Now it has different types. My border can be dotted. It can be, I can put a dotted border. As you can see, it's dotted. Let me remove the width. Dotted border. It can be solid. Solid means it's the lines are bolded and not solid. In most cases, this is one you'll be using. So I've given my CSS, I've given it a very nice border. Now, having said what I've said so far, I want to see if we understood this thing. Let me change the size of this element to 2 rem. Okay, this is my nice heading. I've done my heading. I like the way it's looking. And okay, let me give it a padding. Let me remove this padding top 0. I'm sorry. Let me remove the margin top instead. Okay, so I've finished doing this work, but I come and I notice that I don't like the fact that I've given it a very nice border, but I don't like the fact that this my border is too close to H, and I want to shift it to the right. What do I do? What property do I use? I want to put a white space between H and my border. What property do I use? Somebody should help us out.
Is it on top? The space you want to give, is it on top or by the side?
By the side, yes, by the side, the left-hand side.
Okay, you use margin left, margin right.
Margin right. Should we try it? Margin right.
No, padding.
Yeah. Use padding right. Are you sure it's padding right?
Yeah.
Padding right. And I call it, let me say 10 pixel. Didn't work. Are you sure? Look very well. Any other person helping us? Use padding left, not right. Hello. So did you get that?
Okay. Yeah.
Because this is where the padding right you did actually, it's applied on this side. So the padding left is applied on this side. That's it. Okay. So if I want to put a space up, I use padding top, padding. So padding is used when there is a border and you want to give a nice space between that border and. So margin, if you use margin, it will shift even with the border. Everything will shift to the right. So that is it for that. So having said that about border, I've included my border style. Now, this my border, I don't like the color. I want to change the color. It took the default color that I defined as my color there, but I want to check its own color. What do? I use border color, and I define a color for my border, call it say green. My border now has a color. And maybe I see that this border, I want it to be a little bit bigger than it is. I want to define a width for my border. I use border width and I call it say 5 pixel. See, the border is now bolder than it looks. So I have these 3 properties called border style, border color, and border width. Used to work on border. Now, in CSS, we cherish shorthand properties a lot. We cherish shorthand properties a lot. I'll be introducing one now. I'll be introducing one now. Instead of using border style, border color, and border width, I can change this property to just border, call it border. Then change it to border. Then I define the first thing I define the size, maybe the same 5 pixel I use, 5 pixel. I define the next thing I define the border color. I call it blue. The next one I define the border style. I call it dotted or double. Now, this is what happens. Each time you write CSS properties, the last property you wrote overwrites the previous property. So this one automatically overrides this ones, just so that you know. Just note it somewhere. Well, I can now delete this guy or comment it out and work with this. I can now delete it. So this is the shorthand version of border style, border color, and border width. Border style, border color, and border width. All you need to do is to separate them with spaces and you're good to go. So this is what we had before, but the property has been shortened to this form. Similar thing goes for my padding. You know, I have padding here. I have padding left, I have padding top. Let me include padding right, let me include, okay, let me just put a nice padding top. Let me just say, okay, top, I want it to be 5 pixel. Okay, I have a space there. I come down, do the same thing. I say border padding bottom. I want it to be, give it another nice 5 pixel. And padding right. Let's say for some reason my text is very long and it gets to this point and I still want that space there. I give it a nice padding. I say padding right. Padding right. I defined it as, I still call it 10 pixel. So I now have 4. I have padding top, bottom, right, left. So the same thing that we did here can also be applied here using the shorthand property. Instead of writing padding top, right, left, I can come here and write padding, and define the values for top. Now, your first value, the value you enter here as the first value is your padding top, 5 pixel. The next one is your padding right, 10 pixel. It goes clockwise. Let's imagine you have 12 o'clock. You now go 12, 1, just like that. Now, there are 2 ways of writing this shorthand property. If I leave it like this, the way it's written here now, what I'm saying is that the first one will be padding top and bottom. The second one will be padding left and right. So this one means the same thing as writing padding top. If the padding top and bottom, okay, means just say top and bottom, while the second number stands for top and bottom, left and right. Left and right. So if you write it like this, all you're saying is, this my padding should be top and bottom. But if I continue and I include the 4 of them, which you will encounter in some cases, I can go, the first number is your padding top, the second one is your padding right, the third one is your padding bottom, and the last one is your padding left. So it goes like that, clockwise. So padding left. So these 2 things are the same thing. This one is short version, and this one is even shorter than this one. So that is it for padding. So you can use any of the approaches. You can use this, you can use this, you can use this. You want to make your code leaner, tight, smaller, instead of writing so many lines of code, you can shorten it down to this. The same way, the same thing you do here, you can also apply for margin. Also write it as, instead of writing margin top, margin bottom, you can just squeeze it into one. Say margin, specify 2 numbers for either up and down, left and right, or specify 4 numbers. For top, it's maybe you have to just, it's top. Please don't forget, it's top, left, bottom, and right. Right. So this is how you define your padding in your padding and your margin, and you work with them in CSS. Another sweet property I would like us to look at is called border radius. Border radius. Okay, let me use border radius. Now I've worked with this my H1 elements. I have a border for it, and I want my border to be shaped in a very nice way. I want the corner of the borders to be rounded. That is where I use border radius. Border radius is used to make the corner of your borders rounded. They specify a value for your border radius. Let's say I call it 5 pixels. You see, it has, the more it increases, the more rounded it becomes. So that is what border radius is. It's actually adds beauty to your work. So see and learn more about border radius and see how you can use it to make your borders look very nice and presentable. And border radius, border radius. Okay, so border radius, that's what border radius does for us. Another property I would like us to take a look at before our time runs out is called the display property. Now, the display property is used to make your elements either, as the name implies, either make it display or remove it from your website. Even if you've done this thing with HTML, I've coded with HTML, and I come to CSS for some reason, I want to delete what I did. I don't want it to be visible. Or let's say I want it there, but I want to use it later. You'll see it better as we get to JavaScript and stuff. You know, at times when you want to click an element and you want it to disappear, and when you click, you want it. Okay, can you see my screen now? Sorry, I was muted. Yeah.
Yes, your screen is clear, sir.
Okay, so you see this Google search bar. If you look where there is this rounded area, so this is implemented with border radius. This is implemented with border radius. So this is where border radius, you can see how it adds, makes it look very colorful and stuff. So that is what border radius does. And before we went off, I said I want us to look into display. Let's say for some reason, or not even for some reason, you finish working, and while working with JavaScript, you appreciate it more working with JavaScript. Let's say I want to hide this content, or I want to hide, okay, I want to hide this my anchor elements. That is where display comes in. Now, display has several values. The property display has several values. One of the things it does is, one of the value is none. I'll start from the less complicated to the more complicated ones. One of the value is none. As you can see, when I did display none, it disappeared from the screen. Can you all see my screen? The anchor element is no longer in my screen, even if it is still in your HTML. Display none, it's no longer on my screen. If I remove the display from none, it comes back to my screen. See, it's no longer there. It's no longer there, and it comes back. So this is what display none does. Now, there are different values of display, and one of them is none. The second one I would like us to look is inline.
Hello, sir. Sorry, but I can barely hear you.
Okay. What about now? Is it clearer?
No.
Yes. Hello, can you hear me now?
I can hear you, but it's faint. Very
Okay.
faint.
Okay, what about now?
It's better.
Okay. Okay, so as I said, display is used to, display has several values. We just saw one, none. If you include it, what you're saying is that you don't want this element to be visible on your page. So it automatically disappears. Now I have other properties of display. Another one is inline. Now this inline, what it does is, as time progresses, we'll also understand it better. What it does is, there are some elements that we said before that are inline elements. If you remember, we said we have block elements and inline elements. Now, okay, let's do this. Let's do like this. Okay, let me wrap this my A elements. Let me wrap my A elements. Where are they? Where is it again? Okay, let me wrap this in a div, and let's see how that works. Okay, let me wrap it in a div. I'm not doing anything that we don't know. I'm just trying to wrap my A in a div so that we can use it to see how. Okay, okay. What's okay? So inside this div, I have 3 A's and I have a 1P. Where is 1P elements? Okay, let me say I have this P element. So I have these P elements and I have all wrapped in. Oh, sorry, I thought I wrapped it in a div. Supposed to be inside there. Okay. So these two elements are held inside the same div element. They are held inside the same div element, exactly. Now you see, they are all this because P is a block element. P appeared below A element. Because it's a block element, it appeared below. So I want to do something now. I know we know how we use ID, but let me introduce another one called class. Okay, let me use ID. Let me use ID. We'll come to these selectors later. I just wanted to get this concept. Let me call it group, that's for group. Now I come to my styling. I want to do something here. I call it, sorry guys, I'm having this. I don't know why this keyboard is. Sorry, pardon me for this. This out later. Okay, so I call it GRP. So this GRP is the, remember the div I used in wrapping these guys. I call that div. I'm referencing that div as GRP. We'll come to understand how I did this selector. I will explain that maybe in our next class, but I just wanted to get the concept. I want to style the container holding these two guys. Now, if I come here, I say display, and I say inline. Inline display, sorry. If I come here and say, no, not for this. I'm trying to look at best scenario to use this inline. Okay. Okay, basically inline is used to force block elements to behave like inline elements. You remember we talked, okay, I think I can get a better scenario for this. Sorry. Instead of using this, let me just use, sorry. Yeah, I just want to make sure it's responding. I think something is not right. The P element is not wrapped inside. That's why it didn't capture it before. This is well, let me see. Something is not right. It doesn't like the structure of my HTML document. There's an element that is not properly placed. That's why this thing is not arranged. I'm trying to sort that. So I don't waste that time. I will sort that. But basically, what I want to do is an element that is not properly placed. Okay, this element does not have a closing div tag. There's an element without a closing tag somewhere. I'll check it out later. There's an element that is because I'm styling this, but it's not picking it. It's rather picking only the A. Rather picking these ones and neglecting this. Okay. Yeah, I find it. I find that later why it's not. But basically, what the display inline does is it makes your block elements behave like inline elements. You know, one of the block elements we have is P. Let's say I have P's lined up, which was what I was trying to demonstrate. I have P's lined up, wrapped in a div. And instead of them appearing on top of each other, that display inline will make them appear in a straight line. So instead of them appearing on top of each other, they appear in a straight line. A very good example of using that is when we do, I have this element that is not displaying. So that's what I think something is not right. So okay, it's displaying that. Okay, let me include it here after this. Okay. Okay, so we've done this. Change this to ordered. Okay, for example, this is our unordered list, as you remember unordered list. And this unordered list, we want to change it. See the way it's appearing on top of each other. And I want to change it to, let's say, instead of appearing that way, I want it to rather appear in a line. That is where your display inline comes in. I want it to rather appear in a line. Okay. Display. Okay, yeah, this is what I was looking for. Sorry. So each of the elements inside, by default, each of these elements that are block elements. Each of these list items are block elements, and I want them to appear in a line. So you can see I can use my inline styling. You can use my display inline to actually change that and manipulate that and make it work this way. So this is what display. For now, we've done display none, we've done display inline, and there are several of them. By default, this element comes as display block. This element comes out as display block by default. That's what I was looking for. What display block is. It does the opposite of display inline. The display inline changes block elements to start appearing in a line. While display block changes display inline changes block elements to appear in a block, while display block changes inline elements to makes them appear as a block. So if you can see, this is how this element comes by default. Even if you remove display block, this is how the element comes by its own default. So when we now introduce a display inline to this element, what we are saying is that display them in a line, and you see the whole of the element is displayed in a line, just like this. If you expand this, see it displayed in a line. So you remember at times when you have your navigation, I know some of you have wondered, how do you create navigation? Because when you create your A elements, when you wrap your A element inside your list item, you notice that they come up one on top of each other. How do you now make them in a line? This is one of the ways we can use in making them appear in a line. So this is one of the application. I create my navigation, and I don't want my navigation to appear one on top of each other. I want it to appear like a real navigation. I want it to appear in another way. Let's say this my navigation was, yes, yeah, maybe it was just exactly the way it is. Maybe I have a website that is teaching people CSS, and it's showing them different styling methods. And default, it comes like this. It comes one on top of each other. And I decide that, no, I don't want it like that. I want it to display in a line. So that is what display inline does. So we have display none, display inline, display block. We've known that 3 today. We still have others like display flex and so many of them, and a few others, display flex and a few others, which those ones are broader than just these ones. I'll be looking into those ones as time in the next classes. But just know that the display property is an important property. It's an important property. There's also display inline block. It displays the elements inline and treats each of them as a block, which means you can put padding here and just manipulate it as a block element. So inline styling now is one block, internal styling is one block. But if you remove the inline, displays it as an inline element. Just gets the concept. The basic differentiation is between the block and inline. They will now have the one that intermarries the both of them, inline block. So display has none, it has inline, it has block, it has inline block, it has flex and grid, which we'll be looking into as we proceed. Those are broader dimensions of the display, the value of the display element property, which we'll be looking into as we proceed. So to do a recap of what we've done today, we've looked at some CSS properties that we can use to manipulate and make our website look nice and appealing, and how we apply them. So I don't know if we have any question, because I want us to end here for today. From next week, we'll now dive into how to flexbox and start working, changing the look and feel of our elements. So any questions, please, before we call it a day today?
I don't have any questions so far. No question from me.
Okay. There is something I want us to do this within the week. Create something like this. You see, there's a white space here. You know how to create this element, right? We should know how to create it. You can easily select to create these elements. Give it like this, give it this background. Just something to practice CSS within the week. And if you write this, it will not, the color will not be white. You know how to change the color. And also, if you write it, it might not be sitting in this position. So you can use your padding and your margin to make it sit in the center. Another thing I will also show us before we go, which is very important, is this. Having looked at margin, there's one very important role margin plays for us, and I would like us to look at it. Let's use our H1 element, for example. You know, at times you have a page, you have something that you want to center an element in your page. Now, instead of using margin left, margin right, and try to manipulate the margin left and right to get it in one position, we can use a property of a value of the margin property called still margin, but the value this time around is still margin, but we now set the left and the right margins. We now set the left and the right margins to auto. We set the left and the right margins to auto, and maybe the top and the left, the top and the bottom, you can put it any value of our choice. So remember, we said that whenever we have two values in the shorthand property of writing margin and padding and margin, the first one is top and bottom, the second one is left and right. So this author is now saying that, please auto scale this element and make it sit at the center. If you do it like this alone, it will not work. It will not sit at the center until you apply a width to the element. So once you apply a width to the element, apply a width to it, give it a width of say 200 pixel. Then automatically you've said, let me increase it. It's small, call it 500. Okay. You remember that the element we're talking about, this whole content is the element. This whole content, including the box, is the element. this whole content is including the box. So if this, so this is my 500. So you can see the element is now seated in the center, but which means I have to go and change the font size. I have to go and change my font size and make it font size. Just remove it so it will come with the default font size. Or make it smaller. Okay. So you can see it's sitting, this element is sitting at the center. Here, the space here and the space here are equal. If you want to spread it, all I need to do is to change the font size of this particular element. I change that font size, call it for 12 pixel. So remember, don't forget that when we say the element, it includes the border. Remember, we said the width is the border, the padding, and the content of the element itself. It forms the width. So it's now sitting at the center of my page. This my box is sitting here. But if I remove that margin auto that I defined for left and right, it goes to the right. So this is how you center. It is used to center your elements. It is used to center your elements. Then if I want to center the text, I can use the property align text align, which even in Microsoft Word, you remember this property. I can use the property text align to just align the text. The text will be aligned in the container itself that it's supposed to contain. So don't forget this process. If I remove this again, the text will be centered, but the whole of my content, including the box, the margin, the padding, will be to the left. But if I include it, if I centralize it by including auto, it comes to the center of my page. So this is how you can automatically center. So if you can see that even if I shrink the width of my browser, it's still at the center, no matter the size of my browser. The only thing now is that I may have to now reduce the padding, the padding on this side so that it shrinks further. So this is it for this class. And unless you have questions, I would like us to try on this. If you can take a screenshot or something, I want us to work on this. So you've seen how to center. You center, choose the color, and style this. Just a small assignment to walk through the week as we master CSS. So you have to apply background color here. You have to apply the border here. Remember, and the border will have a padding. The border will have the width to have a color and a size. So you also with this here, you have to also apply the color here, and this is an element that comes with, this is the CSS property element, a HTML element, as we've done before. So any questions before we round off and go? All right, in the absence of questions, Pauline, do you have a question? I saw your hand raised up. Okay, no, sorry.
No, I don't really have a question, but all I will say here is that one will have to put up more seriousness towards the whole work so that
the thing is, the only way you master this thing is to actually do it.
yes, I understand that.
That's the only, there is no magic. You have to, if you want to master it, you have to practice. You have to practice and work on it. At some point, we also have a place where we can upload our work, like a portfolio that we can use for display, which we will do as time goes on. Once we get to the middle of CSS, start delving into knowing how to use GitHub, the rest of them, so that we can actually do designs and set them up so that people can actually see what we've done.
Okay.
All right.
And sorry, please, let me just ask this on a quick note, please. Okay. Though it may sound so funny, but like when we finish our work, when we finish our coding and design our web page,
yes.
What about the launching? Is there any need for any launching of that particular? At the end of the day, is there any need for any launching, or it will automatically be launched on the net?
Yeah, there is, okay, there are, when you say launching involves so many things. It means that you have to host, get a domain name, but there are several, uh, there are several, there are several, I'm trying to get the right words to use. There are several hosts that you can use that are free. They are dedicated for designers. You finish your work and you host it, and just like every other website can be viewed, and your work can be viewed by anybody anywhere. We have GitHub, we have Netlify, we have Vessel, and so many of them. That's what I said. At some point towards the middle of our CSS class, we'll start introducing those things. So that most of these are designs, and any design you do, please keep it. As we do them, we'll now post them there so we can actually showcase to people what we've done, that this is what I'm doing, this is my learning process, and this is what I've been able to do. And as I said, after CSS, you can call yourself a web, at least you can design a static web page to start with. So you can call yourself a website builder. You can build a website, any website, after when we're done with CSS.
Okay.
All right. So, and if you need to do that, you need to actually have a place where you can actually show your work, which is where the hosting comes in. So there are free host sites that we can use to host our work and allow people to see what we've done. That's what I was trying to say.
Okay. All right, sir.
All right. So in the absence of that, I want to wish you a very happy week, and I want us to put more seriousness and work on this. And I don't need to explain the benefits of this, but I assure you, it's something that you always benefit from. There is no, you always benefit from. Let me just stop there. So please take a screenshot of this if you haven't, and do it and drop it on our Slack channel so we can see and look. By the way, Suka, that was a nice work you did the last time. I say it again, and I was really impressed. Keep it up.
Thank you.
All right. All right. So
Okay.
I will call it. We'll stop here and we'll continue next week by the special
All right.
grace of God. All right.
All
Take
right,
care
sir.
of
Thank you
yourself.
very much.
Yeah.